The next game we're going to rank is Super Mario 64. It was nominated by @Magnesia_Nova and @EricWellweird on Twitter. Developed by Nintendo EAD. Published by Nintendo on the Nintendo 64. Earliest release date, I believe, is June 23rd, 1996 in Japan. So, I mean, how do we start with this one? It's one of those games I feel like...
Biggest game ever.
Rank 1.
Yeah, I don't know.
Top rank, we're done.
All right. All right. Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. We will have to discuss it before we... I mean, this might be a kangaroo court, essentially.
Does everybody...
But...
I mean, I think this is one of those games where even, not most, but many of our listeners will remember it when it was new or when it was announced. And
for me, I was a PlayStation child for a few years, but the local game store I used to visit a lot had the demo playing at all times on their TV, and it always looked really cool to me. I did eventually get it, I just forget when.
This was the first and only time I ever rented a system to play this game. I rented an N64 just to play this game.
What? You mean you weren't interested in like Wayne Gretzky's like super hat trick hockey or whatever it was?
3D hockey.
N64 is a pretty sad launch lineup, but this was the bright point in it.
Shadows of the Empire was there.
Yeah, I was going to say the Star Wars game was a big deal too. It wasn't a great game, but it was a lot of fun at the time.
I'd say Killer Instinct Gold is worth playing. I'm pretty sure that was launch.
Yeah, but it's a piss poor port of Killer Instinct 2.
I guess.
But
you could still go to arcades at that point in time.
Yeah, but anyway,
I think what you think is in terms of launcher. Sorry, there weren't that many games over the whole period. Like for a year or something, I don't think there were that many releases on the N64. Just generally, like
it was
Mario 64 was.
There was like for N64, it was like there was one must-play game every 6 months, which, if you think about it, is actually pretty normal. But at the, I remember at the time it felt like we weren't getting enough. But we did get Super Mario 64 right away, and I mean this game was, at the time it was bonkers because it looked like nothing else.
It wasn't the first.
It was expensive too. All those games were expensive compared to PlayStation games.
And much like the original Super Mario Brothers, it was not the first of its type, but compared to everything before it, like say Bubsy 3D, nothing really compares.
Well, that's like comparing gold to zirconium. There, like that's a pretty large gap.
Yeah, Jumping Flash. Jumping Flash was good.
Jumping Flash is a different genre, though. It's not really. It's like it's a platformer in a sense, but I wouldn't count it as the same.
I would
Jumping
say
Flash is good, but not Mario.
Hang on. Let's bring the focus. We can discuss N64 versus PlayStation later, but we want to specifically focus on what made the N64 like the it console, at least for a little while.
Well, it was never more popular than the PlayStation. By the way, this is a PlayStation fight now.
Yeah. No, we're not doing this right now. We're discussing Mario 64.
I would say Mario 64 is a game that the PlayStation couldn't do. You can look at every PlayStation game that exists. It couldn't do Mario 64, not in the way that it is. And that made a huge difference.
Mostly because of the type of controller that it had was completely revolutionary. Outside of graphics, you got to look at, this was the perfect game to showcase the analog controller that Nintendo had come up with. It wasn't the first system to have an analog controller. That would go to the Atari 5200, but nobody liked or remembered that. Nintendo knew that 3D games needed something more than just a D-pad.
This controller was basically made for the game.
Exactly, and they continued that philosophy from that point. You can see, the GameCube controller is definitely made for all of the types of games that they were making at the beginning of this GameCube's lifespan.
The GameCube controller, I think, was a little bit more forward thinking than this. Like, I think when they made the N64 controller, which I love for accomplishing what it set out to do, it was very good. But the problem is that they kind of assumed that, we're going to get lots of games like this. And no, actually, games like that are really, really hard to make. Most people aren't going to bother to do something like that.
The dual sticks was a significant improvement upon that design. The dual sticks, which have remained in gaming since then, rather than the analog and C sticks that set up. So I mean, it was a great forward-thinking thought, but it got replaced very quickly by the.
I will
DualSense
say,
on PlayStation.
I don't actually mind the 64 controller as much as some people do. I kind of like how you can hold in different ways and kind of have a different setup for different genres. I've always really appreciated that.
I think a lot of people that don't like the controller are people that came in from a different controller and were just like, I don't get it. I refuse to learn. I'm just an idiot.
It's probably the most natural controller that I can think of, other than maybe the GameCube as well, being how it fits your hands.
Right. The Z trigger button was especially cool because you do hold it kind of like you're holding a gun or something like that, but with your left hand. And you have that Z trigger, and that's still really cool. Like, there's no controller that gives you that kind of weird feeling of using your left hand to shoot. You know, that's just weird, but it works.
Well, I mean, it was really cool if you got. I mean, this is a completely different game. If you had like Perfect Dark, you could use 2 controllers at once, and you could basically shoot with like both of the sticks. It was really cool.
Oh yeah, like Robotron did that too, right?
So it's like a twin stick setup.
Yeah, GoldenEye has that too.
It does? I didn't know that. So anyway, back to Mario 64. I think we got
right. To move back to our current point, this game needs control stick. Like, I've played it without it because of the DS version, which I'm sure we'll get into later. It doesn't work nearly as well.
Yeah, that's garbage.
So, I mean, do you want to... Okay, look, I mean, we said most people have played it. Do you want to just go a little bit about what you do, what it is as a game?
Yeah, so, I mean, I want to go out on a limb here and say that I don't think that it is a translation of the core Super Mario Brothers gameplay to 3D. I think it's a totally different kind of game. And it's not really even a platformer necessarily, because the challenge of a platformer doesn't really work in 3D. And
would you
scavenger hunt?
Would you say it's a little bit more like an adventure game in a way?
Yeah, I mean,
scavenger hunt.
Right, it's a collectathon type thing. I mean, it involves squeezing a lot of gameplay out of it. Now, don't get me wrong, they made a lot of stages, and the stages are very different and they're memorable. I mean, people remember stuff about this game now. I mean, who doesn't remember like the baby penguin, the giant like bomb king, like the chasing the rabbit through the castle?
It was extremely charming. Like, the characters that they came up with were so charming in it.
And they were smart enough not to try to they're like, okay, this thing has this machine has no texture memory, so let's just make everything kind of smooth and cartoony. And it ended up looking, it still looks pretty damn good when you play it today. Like, it does not look bad at all, in my opinion.
Play the Wii U version, by the way. it looks great on the Wii U.
So, and it uses the controls. I know that some people, I feel like Nintendo had the impression that people really did not understand the camera or didn't like how the camera worked, and that's kind of turned them off of making a lot more 3D Mario games. I don't think that's true. I've never heard anyone complain about the camera. It worked. Like, you had the C buttons on the controller, and it worked pretty well, like, for the way the game
I think one of the main things about it is that they never tried to put too many closed-in spaces. A lot of PlayStation games, because they couldn't do big open spaces without heaps of fog, they were always like in small confined spaces, which meant the camera kept hitting walls. Mario 64, it's so open a lot of the time, it can't get caught on anything. It's like, oh, I can sit behind Mario because it's there.
Right. The stage design, I would say, are more like building like a kind of like a playground with different obstacle courses in it. And so you'll have like, that classic first stage, the what's it called? The Bob-omb Battlefield or something like that.
That's a great first stage, by the way.
It's just a great first stage. It's got that great music to it. I mean, it taught you how to play the game in the way that all good Mario games first stages should, in that it was, it had all the basic stuff you could do in it. Like you could kind of like do the surfing on the turtle shell thing. You had the cannons. You had the enemies that you'd do like the butt dive on their back and kill them that way and stuff like that. It was like I said, like a playground with a couple different obstacle courses built in, and you learned intuitively that, oh, you can get a star this way or that way, and it gives you little hints about how to do it.
About the game's design, I really like how it's not like other later 3D platformers where there's just like stuff everywhere. You just kind of have to scour the map for. you kind of got like a pretty basic point A to point B at most of the times, and you're just allowed to figure out how you're going to get there.
Right. It built a little bit on Yoshi's Island, which we talked about earlier, right? Because Yoshi's Island was the first to do the. It did the red coin thing, or did it do the? I think it was something.
Yeah, no, there were you could get up to 5 red coins in Yoshi's in Yoshi's Island, and then I think that was expanded to 8 in Super Mario 64, which I think is the collectiest it gets.
Yeah,
to be
I mean, it
fair
does
for a
so
level.
each stage has a number of stars. They all have the same number, I believe.
Usually 6, and there's like a 7th bonus one you can get if you grab 100 coins
Get
per level.
100 coins, right?
Yeah.
But they changed so much. Like, I'm really impressed with how Mario-esque the game feels without really doing much of the Mario stuff. There's no fire flower. There's no like stomping on turtle shells and like bouncing them off of things. There's not really that many enemies at all. And it's a lot more obstacles than enemies.
I was
Yeah.
at the time. I definitely found it confusing. You know, I was like, where was the fire flower? You can find the there's a couple of Koopas in there that you can do like a whole like mini sub level where you slide down their shells, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
But it's not like a common thing. And you know, obviously, there's not really a Yoshi character, and he was big in the previous 2 games. He was like a big part of them.
You have like brand new power-ups too, like the wing cap and the metal cap. And
And the invisible
Nintendo
cap, yes.
doesn't really do a whole lot of really new things like that often, so that's really nice to see.
But it did still have like the same. If I were to compare it to another Mario game, I'd say it is going all the way back to the original Super Mario Brothers, in the sense that the original Super Mario Brothers was like, no, here's a platforming thing that you've never really done before. It's been done kind of, but it's been done very crappily, and we're gonna do it right, and it's gonna be amazing. And it's gonna be this world that's worth exploring, is interesting. Then they throw stuff at you like the swimming levels, right? Which operates on a totally different set of mechanics, but is still intuitive if you played the earlier stages of the game. And Mario 64 does exactly the same thing in kind of the same way. It's got some underwater stages which are very different from anything that Mario's ever done. You have like, you can run out of breath and choke to death, drown, which is really disturbing.
Oh yeah, that is
I was actually
really
going to
lovingly
mention.
morbid sprite.
I was
well, not
actually
sprite.
going to get to that. I think that this game is tonally probably the darkest Mario game.
Oh yes, definitely.
I don't know about that. I mean, compared to, say, Paper Mario.
It's pretty dark. I mean,
well, yeah, it's definitely down there at least. I mean, the endless staircase, as fun as I found it, always gave me the Ghiblis. That music is just.
and the eel.
Oh yeah.
Scared the
And the
crap
piano.
out of me when I-
Yeah, the evil piano. The entire booze house is, yeah, pretty creepy. And also, I always thought that the mood in the Bowser obstacle courses was really serious compared to anything else.
Yeah, and there's like a lot of mechanical stuff in a lot of the later levels.
Yeah, the giant clock is one of the last ones.
That mechanical stuff is a lot less cartoony than a lot of the other things in the game. Like, you know, early in the game, you have all these, like, you know, lush areas and things like that to go around in. And in the texturing that they use on there doesn't really fit with any other Mario games.
Sateng, I think you had a couple things you wanted to say.
Oh yeah, gladly. Well, I believe there was.
So let's talk about, first of all, the name of the game, right, is Super Mario 64. There's no brothers in it.
Yeah.
And, I was really, everybody was confused by that because it's the first real Super Mario game that doesn't have Luigi in it.
I guess it's the first solo one since Donkey Kong Jr., so maybe it's like Mario had a heel face turn when his brother decided he was being, you know, too evil training monkeys, so he decided to send him back on the course. So, Luigi might have originally been in the game. The programmers were apparently throwing around a split-screen cooperative mode that would have had the second player as Luigi, but being early N64 technology, that I guess they couldn't figure out how to make the cartridges powerful enough to run 2 separate screens at the same time. So Luigi was scrapped in the long run. I don't know if he can actually get his data if you search for it. Maybe somebody's figured out. At least
They would have found it. They would have found it.
Yeah, so his model's not even in the game. I mean, you know,
I don't think it's there. I think
Yeah, L is real.
yeah, the L is real 24. I don't know if we wanted to explain that. There's this like weird little stone.
Star fountain. Yeah.
Yeah, the stone and the fountain. L is real 2401, which some people for some reason think is a hint for unlocking Luigi in the game, but it's all bullshit. Let's be honest.
No, what that actually says, it's just it's kanji, right? Or not kanji, it's kana.
Has anyone actually tried the DS version of this game? It's not
for about 5 minutes. Yeah,
I bought it when I got my original Fat DS at launch, and so I have a few things to say about it.
It's kind of I guess not quite a remake, more like a director's cut of the original game. It has some interesting features. For one thing, you start off the game as Yoshi, who's got a different moveset, and you don't get Mario until a little while on. And you can actually get Luigi and Wario, and apparently there was a small rumor that you get Waluigi at one point, that died out pretty quickly. I'd almost say it's a better version if it weren't for the controls, which are just really tough to use, just a D-pad screen.
No, there's two different methods that you can control it by, and I think one of them gets quite overlooked, and I'll talk about that. So you have the D-pad, which is obviously not up to snuff because this game is all about analog control. But it does use the touch screen in a unusual way that nobody nowadays would think to use it that way. So when the original DS originally shipped, it came with a wrist thing that like a wrist string that also had a thumb pad on it that was meant to be used on the touch screen in addition to the stylus. So you were supposed to use this thumb pad, and you could get some semblance of analog control out of it. It's just that subsequent DSs were not shipped with this. So anybody who got onto the train later, which was almost everyone with the DS Lite, would never have experienced controlling the game in that way.
Right. The thumb pad basically made it control a little bit like touchscreen smartphone games now, right? Like it had like a...
It was smooth on the bottom, so it was very easy to move your thumb around on the screen. It was awkward in that it's in the middle of the controller, if you will, but it was a lot better than trying to do it with the stylus. And it was a lot better than the D-pad. It just was wonky and didn't function as well as an analog stick could. In fact, the Wii U port of this version of the game, both versions of Super Mario 64 are on the Wii U Virtual Console, still has that intact, but it unfortunately, I wish they would have just tried to emulate that analog control, precision control, not with the touchpad, but with the analog sticks. But they didn't go the extra mile to do it, unfortunately.
Too expensive.
The biggest problem with the DS version when you're trying to sneak around things, because there are some enemies you actually have to move very slowly around, and if you're using the D-pad, the speed you go at isn't quite slow enough, so...
Yeah.
This, I think, was the first game released in North America that called Princess Toadstool Peach, which was kind of used as like her nickname in this game.
It was also
after that, it was just kind of like, oh, she's just Peach because.
Well, it wasn't the first game actually. The first one was actually Yoshi's.
A golf game?
No, it was Yoshi's Safari, the not very well remembered Super Scope light gun spin-off of Mario that actually first called her Peach. I even have an image somewhere to prove it. I personally do prefer the name Peach over Toadstool. It's a little less mouthy, but I think Robotnik is a better name than Eggman, so... Mario got the better end of the deal when they did.
I agree.
When they did that.
Correct me if I'm wrong. This is the first time that Charles Martinet voiced Mario on a console game.
Console. Yeah, on a console game. I mean, he did do like some sort of PC Mario thing. Like, what was it called? Mario's Fundamentals.
Poker games or
Go Fish or whatever. And that was his first actual appearance. But as far as a mainline actual on a Nintendo console appearances, this is Martinet's debut, more or less.
To be as offensive as possible, they made sure that if you left your controller alone long enough, Mario would fall asleep and he would dream of pasta and
rigatoni.
pizza.
Yeah, but you know what?
Two burly
it is worth mentioning that the game really did know how special it was, even with that screen being able to manipulate him and do all that stuff. I mean, it was a gimmick at the time, but it blew everybody's mind to play with Mario.
Oh yeah, like when before you select the file, it just has like the giant Mario head, and you can like grab his nose and stuff. And
it's a pretty good way to show off the hardware, show off how to use the analog stick.
Yeah, it was a way of like
better than Stretch Panic.
Let's rank Super Mario 64. I'm gonna put this out. So right now, our top ranked game is Super Mario Brothers 3. I would put this game above that, and I'll tell you why. Which is that Super Mario Bros. 3, as great as it is, and it is great, is just a iteration upon Super Mario Brothers. You know, it's a brilliant iteration. It's a very thoughtful, inventive, and attractive iteration, but it is an iteration nonetheless. And Super Mario 64 really is something kind of new under the sun. There were 3D games before it, but even after it, it took a long time for. I mean, Nintendo really didn't do that many 3D platformer type games, unless you count the rare games, which I don't.
It's amazing how this game just came out fully formed.
Yeah, it feels like kind of like this is like there should have been another Super Mario 64 that was the first game, was kind of rougher, and then they came back and did this. But it feels. I mean, this is the Mario game, mainline Mario game for the N64, and it's remains one of the best Mario games ever. And they've never quite gone all the way back to it.
Well, I would say that Super Mario Galaxy is a really great follow-up to it.
It is. Yeah, I'm not.
What?
I'm not
no credit to Sunshine?
Well, Sunshine is a better game. A lot of people have actually championed that game as of late, and it's not as bad as people.
Oh, I don't think anyone ever thought it was bad. It's just you can't compete with Mario 64.
It is good on its own merits, just in between the sandwich of Super 64 and Galaxy. It feels like there are some janky design points about it, but no,
There's
not
filler
bad.
in Sunshine than either of the other two.
Is anyone
Also,
can anyone make a strong case for why this isn't better than Super Mario Bros. 2?
I can.
Go ahead.
So, I know it has been said, on these podcasts that I am not a big fan of the N64, and that's just really the hardware. And I'm not taking away from this game. I think it's a great game. I'm going to preface that. It changed the way I thought about games as a kid, and societal impact, cultural impact, absolutely. This game changed the way games were made and 3D games were thought of, and they made 3D games fun. A lot of 3D games were so slow and janky and not charming and not fun to play. I mean, you can go back and see anything that was 3D before it. I mean, they're the rare charming ones that are fun to play from before it, but there are only a few. And every game made during this generation tried to emulate it after it came out. There were tons of games that tried to be it and weren't it. Now, having said that, the 3D platformer as a genre has almost completely gone away. You have a few rare exceptions. You have Grow Up, or Grow Home, sorry.
Yeah, Grow Up's the sequel, though.
Grow Up's the sequel, which is, by all accounts, a great game in the same kind of ilk. But there's a reason why this genre has kind of gone away, and I think it will come back once people have good ideas to add to it. But in the end, it is mostly a sandbox to try a lot of fun things. And those things were fun, but going back to it, I think, is less compelling than something like Super Mario Bros. 3 or Doom. I think both of those are extremely addictive games that people still make content for.
Right. There's structure to them.
There's structure to them, and they're extremely addictive. You can do a lot with them. Super Mario 64, you get a bunch of objectives and you figure them out, and I don't think it's as addictive. And I don't think it holds up for somebody who's young, for instance, whereas Doom and Mario Bros. 3 would. Like somebody who's a young kid might have a hard time playing this game because it doesn't control like any other 3D game now. Not that that's its problem, but a lot of progress has been made.
Control? Like, it's just the camera that's a little bit different, but the camera is only simplified. It's not like it's hard to understand.
No, but I think there have definitely been a lot of major strides in that area that kind of diminish it for me. I'm not saying that
I would say that if the camera operated like cameras do now, where you've got like free roaming camera you control with the right thumbstick, it would make the game worse. It wouldn't be as, it wouldn't control as intuitively, because you get used to in this game, like you go a direction and it's like, oh, I can't quite see my guy the way I want to. You just press the one of the C buttons once or twice and it goes snaps right to where you want to be.
Oh yeah, I do think that it was masterful in how it did that. In fact, the camera itself was acknowledged as a camera in the game. I mean, it's
which is really very meta. There's a guy following you around with the camera in the cloud. Yeah, I mean and you can see him in that one part of the castle where there's a mirror. You can actually see him. He's always there. But to me, you're just making the case for why this game is so special and why it deserves to be on top, which is that no other game could do it. It's not like it did something and it's like no other game wanted to do it. It's hard to make a game like this. And even Nintendo did not want to, it would spend a long time and a lot of effort to make follow-ups to it. And I feel like that although there's kind of this feeling that it's not as accessible as like, say, New Super Mario Brothers and its successors, I don't think that's so much the case. It's just harder to make a good game like this.
We've seen how many games have spawned from this. Well, actually, probably more from the Rareware games, but this game had a part in it. We've seen that it's really hard to do well.
I mean, you have all kinds of pretenders to it. You had like 40 Winks, you had Jersey Devil, you had even the medieval games.
Gex. We could go on forever about Gex.
Yeah, I mean, there were
good games. I mean, there's
Toy Story 2. There were like Bugs Life, even there were tons of popular games from that era that copied this structure.
And let's not totally sell short Banjo-Kazooie and stuff like that,
sure.
which were really good games.
Does Blinks the Time Sweeper rank anywhere on this?
I don't care. So who disagrees? I mean, we've got two opinions out there now. I'm saying it's on top. I guess Vice is saying it's slightly less than on top. It didn't really frame his answer.
I would say that it's right below Doom.
Okay.
I would go for number 1. That's just me.
I will be honest. I apologize to anyone who thinks I hate Super Mario Bros. 3. I really don't. But I also think the game gets maybe a little more credit than is deserved. In comparison, Super Mario 64, I think, does get all the accolades that it does for really moving games to a place so far ahead that no other game ever since has revolutionized, really. I still think that it's really the beginning, in a way, of modern games as we know them even today.
Right. I mean, a lot of times when you see a game now that just shuts people up immediately, like, what is that? It's because it looks really cool. Like when you see a game that has like, oh man, the graphics on this game are so good. That wasn't really the case with Super Mario 64. It shut people up because it's like, whoa, this is exactly what we imagined a 3D Mario game would be, but you never really thought it was possible at the time. It looked like a cartoon come to life, especially at the time. Now, not so much. But
that first time you flew in the wing cap was really magical for a lot of people, including me.
I mean, it's funny, like, because when the demo console was set up to bring this full circle, there was a single TV demo console set up to play Nights into Dreams, and nobody touched it, which is not fair to that game. But it had like the 3D controller and everything set up for the Saturn, and it's like an all flying cap type thing. But that's all it was. And I think that's kind of the death knell of Sega and its design philosophy was at that time, because they did arcade experiences and they did them very well. They probably did them better than anybody else ever has or ever will. but you can't translate that into this like new era of game design. It just doesn't work the same way anymore. And as good as Knights is,
Knights was very much an arcade game with arcade philosophies, especially from
arcade game.
Yeah. I mean, it's very addictive. It's fun. It's fast, but it's not a. How long would you say that it would take a brand new player of Mario 64 to play without any previous knowledge?
Well, I can tell you,
it's a 20-hour game, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big game. There's a lot to see. There's a lot to do, and it's fun to do. And it's just like, even when I play it now, like I pick it up to just like, I'm just gonna play this game a little bit to remember how it works, and I get sucked into it. I'm like, I got to get the next star. Like I got to do the next thing. No matter how many times I've done it, I get into it.
I think it's that, like...
I think hear what Cal has to say, actually.
Oh, okay. Cal?
Do you? I mean, like, you guys have said most of what needs to be said.
Okay, so we got 2 votes for number 1. We got 2 votes for Below Doom, I think, right?
Wait. Didn't Bob say that...
yeah, number 1.
Bob said number 1. You didn't say number 1, Zippinga.
You know...
That's right.
You know, I am honestly going to say number 1, except for Super Mario. So below Super Mario World's my second favorite Mario game there is. Honest.
Okay. So it doesn't matter what Cal thinks.
I know. I knew that. I knew that was coming in, though. Like, there's no way. I mean, the short of it is, you know, you were mentioning this, and I will iterate just a tiny bit. Super Mario 64 is one of the first games that I would say, one of the last games that came out as a game that was like, wow, this game's going to be amazing, and it was amazing. You know, games now, you're always like, oh, that looks good. I bet it's going to be crap. Like that's how you look at
everything.
hype.
We've seen this with No Man's Sky recently, where it's like, this game doesn't deliver on like 100% of its magical promise that they didn't actually totally promise. And
the way I see it, this game basically just instantly created a massive, for the time, subgenre. That's a big deal.
Definitely.
But
How would you say it's a subgenre? It was like, okay, well, this is how you make 3D platformers, and everyone was just like, oh wow, that is how you make 3D platformers. I guess we're gonna do that for the next 20 years. Like,
and then they tried it and failed miserably, and now kind of nobody wants to make those games.
I mean, you could even argue that the philosophy of how you have to collect things in 3D worlds all stems from this. Like, any Assassin's Creed game wouldn't exist without this game.
Achievements in themselves, like, as in the thing that people like for some reason, that's all this game is. It's a set of achievements. You just get them, and then the game's okay, you got enough achievements, go forward. Like, that's it.
But part of the fun of this was like kind of exploring how you would get that, because they'd only give you a little bit of a hint. Like usually it was just like you'd select a star on the starting screen.
Yeah,
and it would
just
have
the
like
name
some
of
kind
the
of
hint.
pithy little kind of clever-ish name for what that star was, and you're supposed to figure it out. But anyway, okay, so number 1.
Yeah, I wouldn't fight that.